Good evening, dear friends, and good afternoon, Sister Henium, who's joining us from England. And we have a friend from Vietnam and some friends from other parts of the world. So welcome to everyone, also from America. So today is a special, our monthly gathering we have for friends of Ahimsa around the world and the different communities in India. And we're very blessed and very fortunate to have Sister Henium with us today, who's a dear younger sister in a way in my Dharma family, but a wise one, a very wise sister. So age is not material in these things, as she will explain to us later when she discusses the Diamond Sutra and how to live with the teachings of Diamond Sutra. So, and I will introduce Sister Henium a little later in that context. But before that, we thought that as with our sessions, we start with a meditation, maybe for 15 minutes or so. And so I lead that, and then we will go into the teachings, and then we'll have an opportunity to ask some questions or have a discussion with Sister Henium after that. And if you wanted, you could put your questions on the chat or on the Zoom or on YouTube, and somebody will read them out. It'll happen somehow. So I will just lead the meditation, and I'll lead a short meditation first on a shamatha practice, just to settle our body and mind using the breath and body awareness, and then delve a little bit into what we've been doing on our 60 days of the blooming of a lotus practice every day. Recently, we've been meditating on mental health, or using mental health practices as a way of delving into our own negative mental states, whether they're anger or hatred or some sort of jealousy, and just looking at that and seeing what they are, and then seeing what's feeding them, and then trying to develop a determination not to feed them by the sort of diet we are ingesting, whether it's through our movies or whether it's what we're reading or the conversations we're having. So that's just a short introduction to the meditation, and then we will continue with Sister Henium's offering. And thank you so much for joining, and welcome to Ahimsa's larger family. Being attentive to where we are sitting and how we are sitting. Feeling a solidity in the way we are sitting. We're sitting on a chair, our feet flat on the ground. We're sitting on a cushion. Just feeling that sense of groundedness. And being aware of our posture, following our spine, up our back, this light curvature, vertebrae by vertebrae, elongating the spine with just a sense of ease, not with any stiffness. And feeling the spine entering into the neck, into the head. And with this upright and stable posture, bringing an awareness to our breath as we breathe in and as we breathe out. And bring that awareness to the area of the abdomen. And just feeling the rise and fall of the abdomen with each in-breath and each out-breath. And following the whole length of the breath, the beginning of the in-breath, the end of the in-breath, the beginning of the out-breath, to the end of the out-breath. And noticing the quality of the breathing, with a long breath or a short breath, a deep breath or a shallow breath. Not trying to control the breath, just being aware of the breath as it is. And enjoying the breath, this breath of life. And offering ourselves a gentle half smile of awareness of the gift of life in this very moment. And using our breath and our smile to relax the muscles in our body, from the top of our head to our toes. The muscles in our face, our eyes, our jaws, our shoulders, our arms, our hands, the muscles on our torso, our chest, our back, our legs, and our feet. Just feeling a sense of relaxedness, of ease. And in this state of present moment awareness, we bring an awareness to our mental health as we breathe in. And we smile to our state of mental health as we breathe out. Aware of our mental health, smiling. And seeing poisons such as anger, jealousy, and suspicion in my consciousness, I breathe in. Knowing these poisons are harming me and those around me, I breathe out. Poisons in consciousness, harmful to self and others. Seeing poisons such as anger, jealousy, and suspicion in my consciousness, I breathe in. Knowing these poisons are harming me and those around me, I breathe out. Poisons in consciousness, harmful to self and others. Seeing myself watering these poisonous seeds and allowing them to be watered every day, I breathe in. Knowing that to continue to live like this is to add to suffering every day, I breathe out. Poisons watered every day, adding suffering every day. Seeing myself watering these poisonous seeds and allowing them to be watered every day, I breathe in. Knowing that to continue to live like this is to add to suffering every day, I breathe out. Poisons watered every day, adding suffering every day. Seeing myself determined not to water these seeds anymore, I breathe in. Determined to do things like breathing, smiling, and walking mindfully, and no longer to do things like judging, blaming, comparing, in order to weaken and transform the poisons, I breathe out. determined to transform, taking action to transform. Seeing myself determined not to water these seeds anymore, I breathe in. Determined to do things like breathing, smiling, and walking mindfully, and no longer to do things like judging, blaming, comparing, in order to weaken and transform the poisons, I breathe out. Determined to transform, taking action to transform. So, dear friends, you may want to massage your face or your legs just to feel your body. This is just a short practice which you can develop over the next days, taking any one or other of the mental afflictions that we carry with us. Each one of us has one which is stronger than others, but we carry them all. Or you could take things like anxiety or hatred or arrogance, whatever we feel is our poison, and then we look at how we're feeding it and how we can determine us or build a determination not to continue with that same sort of habit energy. And so I will actually close this part of the practice, this part of the evening, or the meditation part, and just transition actually to introducing briefly our guest for the evening, and also letting her share. So we had sent a little note about Sister Henium, and as I said in the beginning, she's my Dhamma sister. We are both students of Thai, of the Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh, who all of you are familiar with. And we met at Plum Village many years ago now. I can't remember how many, maybe 10, 20 years ago. And she came with her long hair and quite inquisitive about finding things that she says she couldn't find at university. When she was studying at Cambridge, she had all these questions about what is it all about. And I think she felt she found some meaning and some answers at Plum Village, which actually led her to become a nun. And with her boyfriend at the time, who also became a monk. So it is interesting that both of them actually became a monk and nun in that process. And she's really been, in the last few years, deeply engrossed in editing, looking at Thai's work. She was with Thai very much in the last days when he was writing, when he was developing the text on the Heart Sutra, the insight that brings us to the other shore. And also then leading retreats or organizing and leading retreats for journalists, for parliamentarians, for tech companies, all sorts of people. But I think more than anything, being a really important member of the community, the larger community, the monastic community, looking after the younger sisters now that she's considered an elder sister in her own way, in her own right, being a sister nearly for 20 years. I don't know how many, 18 years, I can't remember how many, she'll know. But I think, realizing the importance of building Sangha, which is such a key element of Thai's practice. So I will step back. I would like to say that what she's going to be speaking about is it's the sutra called The Diamond That Cuts Through Illusion. This is Thai's version, and she's just edited a version about living with the Diamond Sutra called The Art, what's it called? Zen and the Art of Saving the Planet, which is already a bestseller before it's been printed. So we're looking forward to it. And in this sutra, there's a man called Subhuti, who's a monk, and there are 1,250 people gathered. And he asked a question to the Buddha, which we will now hear part of the answer. And he says, if sons and daughters of good families want to give rise to the highest, most fulfilled, awakened mind, what should they rely on? And what should they do to master their thinking? So, Sister Henium.
Thank you, Shantam. Good
Would you like
evening,
a sound of the
everybody.
bell before we start?
Yes, please. Wonderful. Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm going to just try and do it so I can see those who are inside the Zoom session, so I can see some of you while I'm speaking and not see myself. I recently heard that that's a good non-self practice in in Zoom sessions, is to hide self-view. Apparently, it's in the settings. So I'm very happy to be able to spend a bit of time with you in this session. And actually, it gives me a lot of joy also to speak about this sutra. And I find it a very positive and accessible sutra, although it has maybe some it was actually the first full sutra I ever read when I arrived in Plum Village. And found myself in the Lower Hamlet Library, and I just found it on a shelf, and I sat down and read the book that Shantam just showed us, and it really touched my heart, and I found its message very empowering. So in a way, my aspiration today is just to give you a little flavor of why it's such an inspiring and joyous sutra to bring into our lives. And to not be afraid of some of its big ideas, which are actually much more accessible than they seem at first sight. So this is a Mahayana sutra from the sort of northern tradition. And although it's set in India, so it's set in the Jeta Grove, perhaps it says in the opening lines that the Buddha is addressing 1,250 disciples. So that's the context of the story of this teaching. And what's particularly special about this sutra is that it is one of the oldest to survive in print. So the earliest version of this sutra in printed form was found in the Dunhuang caves on the Silk Road, and it is the oldest printed, dated text in the world. So it's beautifully set in Chinese characters, and there's a copy of it now in the British Library. And in 2012, I had a chance to go with Thai, with Thich Nhat Hanh, our teacher, to go and visit this 5-meter long scroll, which is the oldest printed text in the world, which is this sutra. And it's a very cherished text for our community and for Thai. So it's lovely to connect to ancient wisdom, to the deep wisdom that has been preserved through the centuries. So simply put, I'm going to demystify the sutra as best I can to share my joy about it. Simply put, the title of Vajrajadika. Vajra is like the kind of the thunderbolt or the diamond, and Chedika is cut through. So it is a simple concept that will cut through, as Shantam just explained, cut through our wrong thinking, is clouding our way of seeing the world and bringing us problems in our mental health, in our actions, and in the way we interact with the world. And so the way the sutra does this is using this technique of negation, which we see quite a lot in Buddhism. So there is something you need to negate, to take away. There is something getting in the way. There is an obstacle. And in this sutra, the Buddha is pointing us towards what those obstacles might be. And dozens of times in the sutra, it mentions 4 notions that are the obstacles getting in our way of seeing reality clearly, and also creating maybe some inner obstacles to our own healing and transformation from inside. So these 4 notions, they are the notion of self. The idea, in Thay's latest way of translating this, the idea that we are a separate self-entity from other people and ultimately from the world around us. So first notion, self. And what's very interesting is we may understand it intellectually, but it may be something that is still driving our everyday actions. So these 4 notions in this sutra are actually something that is maybe deep in our consciousness, deep in our heart, deep in our habits and in our cultures. So 1, the idea that we are a separate self. The second notion that we need to transform, remove, or cut through using this sutra is the idea that human beings are separate from the world around us. Very interesting in our times as well. The third notion is the idea that living beings are separate from inanimate objects like rocks or mountains, and that this idea is also to do with sort of mind and spirit. In Christianity, there's sometimes a complex around like flesh, and so the idea that somehow the spiritual is something different from what we have now, that we are like mortals, but there's sort of other more sacred elsewhere. So we can call this third notion to remove the idea that like living beings are separate from other things. So no separate self-entities, no such thing as a human being, no such thing as a living being. And fourth, no such thing as a lifespan. And I'll explain these 4 concepts in a little more detail and a little bit more practically. This idea of lifespan has something to do with our idea of what life is and isn't. What is it that continues us? What is it that is our life is made of? And in Buddhism, as in many Indic traditions, this is karma. So our actions of body, speech, and mind as energy continue us. So don't be so sure that the day you die, and that you weren't dying before then, and that you won't continue after then. So these are the 4 notions I would just like to look at that really is at the heart of what the Diamond Sutra is reminding us to be careful of. And for me, they become questions in daily life. Am I being caught in myself, in an idea of myself as being separate in this situation? Am I caught in the idea that humans are more special than other forms of life? Am I caught, and maybe any entitlement that comes with that? Am I caught in the idea that I'm just flesh and bones and I'm not sacred? I'm not, don't have a capacity for awakening or that I'm somehow flawed. And the fourth idea, in what way am I afraid of this final moment of dying? And how is that fear of my idea that my lifespan is limited kind of run my life and limiting my capacity to enjoy life and take meaningful action in my daily life? So the first idea to cut through this idea that we are a separate self-entity. Now, this is very, very interesting. This is obviously at the core of a lot of Buddhist teachings in general and Thay's teachings in particular, the idea that we inter-are with other people and with our environment. And I think in the pandemic, we have all lived this reality very acutely. And I think the way it can be a saving grace for us is to realize how many of the things we're experiencing and the situations that are difficult, they do not belong to us only as individuals. We are also living right now a collective experience of suffering, of change, of loss, of grief, of injustice and inequality that has been aggravated by the pandemic. And in our daily life, many of us have been in lockdown. We've been in very limited social situations. I don't think any of us feel especially separate from the people we've been living with. Suddenly we've been sharing a very confined space with members of our family, with other people who we have ended up being in lockdown with. And this creates, on the one hand, both friction, but also really a chance to grow. And so the realm of our practice is the interbeing of the whole household. The whole household is ourself, and even more so in a pandemic, in lockdown. Maybe your household includes pets, plus. So it's very important. And especially when we come to habits, and in the meditation, we were looking at maybe times in recent days when we may have fallen short of our deepest aspiration for how we would like to be and how we would like to respond to our daily situations that we face, and how we like to a quality of energy that we would like to bring to our daily life. And in a pandemic, in a lockdown, when all the life supporting systems are under strain, maybe we haven't been able to be or to respond in the ways that we aspire to. We haven't been the best of ourselves. And so this insight here that we are not a separate self-entity, it can break us out of the idea that we are solely responsible for this situation. Our intention, our aspiration, our commitment to train ourselves to be better, that can all be there. But with this insight of no self, we know that we also need the help of the conditions around us. So we have to organize our life in such a way so that we can respond better. A very, very simple example about this is how we structure our day. Are you introducing the right ingredients in your day so that you can be the best person you would like to be? We are made of our environment. And this brings us on to the second notion, which is human. There's no such thing as a human being. No human being. So no separate self from the people around us, and no such thing as a human being. And so we are made of our environment. We are made of the walk in a park that we might have done today or yesterday, or that we will do tomorrow. We are made of the food that we are eating. We are made of whatever we're consuming on our screens. We're also made of our conversations. And so are we giving ourselves the best chance to be who we would like to be in this situation? Are we refreshing ourselves? Do we have time out in nature every day? Do we have time to exercise or take care of our body every day? Do we have time to relax and have a moment of peace when everything seems very sort of unstructured and chaotic sometimes, and even overwhelming? So it has something to do with how we organize our life. So how we encounter our habits. And Tai has given us the phrase habit energies as a key to understand that there's a kind of energy in the habits we have. So you may like to take a moment to think, what is the habit that I have been most frustrated with myself about in the last week or the last couple of weeks? What habit do I find difficult to accept, and also possibly difficult to transform? And this is where the insight of no self can help us, because a habit that is very hard to transform is a habit that is not only ours. It's not only you, it is also your mother in you. The way you cook is with your mother's hands. The way we talk or react in conversations, perhaps that's our mother, our grandmother. The way we do other things, maybe we see our father in us, our grandfather in us. So this is very important to get out of, I think, the blaming that can sometimes happen when we're in a really difficult situation, as we are now as a planet, as a species in this pandemic, that we need to open up a little bit our perspective, not do ourselves down too much, but see, haha, hi, Mum. I see you in me. Sometimes it's a habit of speech. I have a chance I'm actually staying in England, so I'm closer to my parents at the moment. And there's a habit of speech that I pick up from my mum, which is about self-talk. So when I drop something or make a mistake or knock it over, I hear the phrase, "You stupid girl, you stupid girl." And recently I heard my mum say it to herself. Say it directly to herself. She dropped something. She says, "Oh, you stupid girl." Now, my mum is 71, so she's not a girl. And the insight I got about this was, okay, I say this to myself. My mum says it to herself. I am sure my grandmother said it to herself. And suddenly I saw this phrase, "you stupid girl," falling down through the generations, maybe 100 years. like a lead weight, boom. No transformation. The way I say it is even the same tone that my mum says it. And I think so habits of speech, can pass down through the generations. So this is very important when we are using the energy of mindfulness to introduce awareness and then a wish to shift something. Now, in my practice with this phrase, what I've realized is when I realize it's not only me saying it, more compassion kind of comes up in my heart. As soon as it's either on the tip of my tongue or it comes out or I say it silently in my head, I get to say, "Hi, Mum. Hi, Granny." So I get to meet both of them in that moment. And then it becomes something else, which is not, I am clumsy, I made a mistake, but it is, why am I talking to myself like this? Why am I introducing an element of aggression or blame when it was just the laws of physics that meant something fell down? And why was I distracted? And then it becomes something that creates a lot more space around what happened. And it unlocks a little bit of that, self-blame. So, no self. This is one way that we can unpick some of our habit energies using the insight of no self. Our habits are not alone. Our patterning is not ours alone. It also comes from our society, our culture, and also it comes from our particular moment that we are living in. No such thing as a separate self. No such thing as a human being that is separate from the planet. And I think this pandemic has been a very interesting time for us in some ways we may be feeling more disconnected. In other ways, we may be feeling more connected. So I know, at least in this part of England, so many people are going out for walks because it is the only thing you can do that is not watching a screen. It's the only legal thing in England for the last 5 months. So I'm very happy that people here are getting to be out a lot in nature. And I think it's wonderful just to see the fields and paths full of people connecting to nature. At the same time, I don't know whether in the rest of the day when they're not out on a walk, how connected or how easy it is to feel connected to nature. And one moment when it's very powerful to do this is while we're eating. Many of us, we don't have a chance to do tourism, to travel, maybe to go to our favorite spots in the mountains or by the ocean or wherever it might be. But we can connect to the entire planet, and Ty would even say to the entire food. We have a chance to see that we are really made of non-human elements. We are made of water we drink that has once been a cloud, that has once been flowing down a mountainside, that has once been, in the deep oceans. We are made of the vegetables we eat, the grains that we eat. And whatever we are introducing into our body really is becoming us. And this means that a meal is not just about calories and energy and surviving, or even about just the entertainment and joy of the sense experience of eating. But eating can become something else. And I think in the pandemic, this is very important because, first of all, sometimes some people say the day is only made of breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because living at home, and do I have to sit down at the same table again, and so on. So how can we transform a moment, maybe a dull moment, or even a moment of loneliness? The insight that as a human being, we are not separate from the planet is something we can contemplate as we sit down to eat our food. So we transform what might be a sad or dull experience into something much more cosmic through our deep looking into the food. And usually in Plum Village, we're really looking into the deep origins. You see the rice fields in the rice. We see the fruit on the trees. We see whatever it is that we're drinking, and we connect and allow ourselves to be nourished by that in the moment of eating. So let's move on to the third notion that can help us break through some of our challenges. And this third notion is the idea of living being versus inanimate matter. And I think in our built environment, it's very easy to feel kind of overwhelmed by things that feel dead. I don't know how to describe it. And this insight helped me a lot. And I'll just share one funny anecdote about it. So one of the key principles of the whole of the Diamond Sutra is that a thing is made of non-thing elements. So a mountain is made only of non-mountain elements. A human is made only of non-human elements. A flower is made only of non-flower elements. It's made, like these beautiful daffodils here, it's made of sunshine, warmth, rain, soil, worms, insects. Everything is there in the daffodils. And so we are what we are because of what we are made of, which is not us. And this is sometimes called the dialectics of the Diamond Sutra. Because the mountain is made only of non-mountain elements, that is why it's a mountain. It's made of rock, it's made of ice, it's made of wind, it's made of volcano, it's made of countless things. And that's why we can say it's a mountain, because the flower is made of sun, rain, worms, oil, soil. We can say the flower can be truly a flower because it's made of non-flower elements. So this is the good news of emptiness. Emptiness is really fullness. Emptiness of a separate self, but a fullness of. So nothing is really what it seems. One day, as part of our engaged Buddhist practice, I had to do some work, and the work required printing a document. And this is an interesting fact about Thai, that when he first came to the West, he had no way to print his books. And so he bought these old I don't know the names, but these old printing machines, and Thai himself would compile his books. They would glue them together. And he was responsible for the printing of his own books, both in Vietnamese and in English at the very beginning in the 70s and 80s. And he still had some of these old machines in his hermitage at Plum Village. Maybe there was some affection and fondness for these machines. And when I first ordained, Sister Chan Kong showed us the printing room, and I had a chance to see one of these big printing machines. And she giggled and chuckled and laughed as she opened the side of the machine. And inside, deep inside, where the paper would get stuck, Thai had written the phrase, breathe. Because every time the paper got stuck, he'd have to open up the machine, try and take out the paper. And he had written the word breathe in there to remind himself, in this of all moments, it's a time to breathe and be calm. And so this one day when I was doing some work for the community and I couldn't print the document, it was actually a document for Thai to read that morning, and it wouldn't print, which was a problem because he had to give a Dharma talk. And I wanted to ask the printer to help. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be like Thai, I'm going to breathe. And then I thought, well, according to all of these principles, this printer is not inert matter, because I was like, pile of plastic, just work. I need you to work in this moment. And I had some frustration, anger towards this printer. And then I just suddenly realized, well, maybe, I'm not sure. And so then I put my hand on this printer. I was breathing. And I thought, okay, well, this printer is made of plastic, which means it's made of oil, which means it's made of rainforests, which means this printer is actually a rainforest, and it probably didn't want to be a printer. Like, this oil probably did not want to be a printer in this moment. So I felt such compassion for this printer that had this terrible task of being a pile of plastic in the 21st century. And so I had this moment with this printer, and I spoke to the trees that were in the printer. And I said, could you please help? Thai has a Dharma talk to give, and I would really appreciate your help. Now, of course, the story is that then the printer worked. Now, I'm sure it had nothing to do with what I said or my state of mind. But you never know. But it was a nice moment of insight for me to realize that things are not always what they seem. Things are not always what they seem. And I think as we emerge from this pandemic and face the kind of greatest crisis really of our times, which is the climate crisis and the environmental crisis, which is not disconnected from how this pandemic came to be, I think seeing the sacredness of all life around us is going to become a very, very important spiritual practice. That we don't have we don't separate what is sacred either in our built environment or in our natural environment. And the challenge will be, how can we keep this sense of sacredness really alive in our hearts every day, so that the kind of actions we take and our way of responding to situations really are informed by this insight that don't be so sure. Don't be so sure that there is living and there is dead. Don't be so sure that the mountain doesn't feel. Don't be so sure that the trees and oceans are not alive in the deepest sense. And as some of you may have seen also, there were some molecular discoveries this week that show even what we think, even at the atomic level, life, every single particle is very, very, very alive. So the final notion, and then I will wrap up. The final notion for us to really contemplate day to day is the koan, the kind of question, are you sure that your lifespan is 80 years or 100 years? Are we sure? And in Buddhism, we speak of karma as really the nature of our being. So our actions, karma just means action, our action of thinking, our actions of speech, and our physical bodily actions. So Tai sometimes imagines it, visualizes it like a kind of candle, that in our daily life, we are sending out our thoughts every day. We are sending out our words every day into the cosmos, and we are sending out our physical actions. So we are being sort of carried by what we said to someone that then made them feel a certain way, and then it continues to resonate in their life, or how we thought about something, and then that meant we reacted like this in that situation, or an action we did still resonates months, years later. Now, sometimes that can sound a little bit fatalistic, which it isn't, because it also means that in any moment we can regenerate a different kind of thinking, a different kind of speaking, or a different kind of action. So our karma is a living thing. And I remember Tai sometimes saying that a good thought today can go and catch up and neutralize a bad thought from yesterday. A good word today can go and catch up and neutralize a bad word from yesterday. And I found this very, very hopeful. And I think this becomes really important in our current situation, because there has been immense relationships, either those they are immediately connected to, or we've been become by the situation distanced from others whom we love. And so we really have to ask ourselves, if I am continued by the quality of what I have thought and what I have said, also towards all these people that are continuing me through our relationship and through my actions, am I happy with the state of those relationships? What good energy would I like to send out to those I care about? What little notes of apology? Now I've had some time to step back and be aware, like, this relationship is not as I would like it to be. I'd like to make peace with this person. And that is our life's legacy. It is not really measured, and it is not, our life does not sort of become final the moment we die. Our thoughts and actions and speech will still be continuing after we die. They'll be continuing to resonate through the world. And another way to use the lifespan contemplation is it's something to do with living deeply. And Tai often was in contact with people in prison. I think he found it a very powerful way to connect to people, and he had a lot of empathy for those who were in prison. And sometimes they would read his books and write him letters about how that had transformed their experience in prison. And Tai would often mention this in Dharma talks. And he would say that if a prisoner can live one day in prison with full awareness, enjoying the one flower that is in the prison yard, enjoying their little square of blue sky, that is worth 1,000 days lived in forgetfulness. One day in prison like that, lived in awareness, is worth 1,000 days lived in forgetfulness. So it has something, this contemplation helps us see that it's not about quantity, but about quality. And that we can then ask ourselves, how do I feel about the last 10 days? How do I feel about the last 100 days? What would I like to change? And so we use this energy of aspiration, determination, volition. What would I like to change so that the next 10 days, the next 100 days are more fulfilling, more meaningful, and more in line with how I really want to live my life. We can use this contemplation on there being no such thing as a lifespan, is when we are angry with someone, in particular, when we are angry with someone we live with or in whom we are in close contact, and the anger comes up as a physical force, a heat, our body is taken over by this feeling and this reaction. In that moment, that is the moment to close our eyes, feel our feet on the ground, and ask ourselves the question, where will I be and where will they be 100 years from now? You can say 200 years, you can say 500 years. So, to be honest, for most of us, 50 years would do the trick. But the question is, where will we be and where are we going? And is it worth being angry in this moment? Do I want this anger to be my legacy in this relationship from this moment, or do I want something else? And is it worth it? Is it worth it? Letting rip with our rage. And this I have found a very, very powerful contemplation. So these are these 4 notions that, and what I find fascinating about it and why it really is a koan to kind of bring into our hearts and minds every day and whenever you can. So to ask myself, am I thinking that I'm a separate self in this situation or in this moment? What is that idea? How is that blocking me from this? Sometimes it can be associated also with self-pity. Can I reach out to ask for help to others, not think of myself as too much a separate thing? The idea of human beings being separate. Am I making the most of my natural environment? Am I making the most of my meals? Am I allowing the natural world to come in and be a part of my life as a human being? As a living being, how am I respecting and cultivating reverence and sacredness in my daily life? And finally, for a lifespan, am I really caught in this idea of a lifespan today? Do I have a sense of fear or urgency? And how can that make me reflect more broadly on my relationships and how I'm making use of every day? So thank you for hearing me out on these 4 powerful notions that we can remove with the help of this sutra. And there's a wonderful passage in the sutra where it says, the joy from just reading and practicing it is sort of measureless, that it's life-giving. And my personal experience, I found it a life-giving and uplifting sutra, a sutra that broadens my horizons and helps me break out of the kind of views that may have been unwittingly, unknowingly kind of running my life, running the show. So thank you. And we can have some time for any kind of questions or reflections or even thoughts on what I have shared. And so I hand back to Shantam. And I'm just going to type in the chat the 4 notions, so we really have them very clearly. Okay, thank you so much, everyone.
So thank you so much, Sister Henium, for sharing your wisdom and your practical wisdom of how to handle these four notions of the self, a person, a living being, and a lifespan, which can seem esoteric, but I think with Thai's guidance and our collective practice, we are able to touch these in our own lives. And thank you so much for sharing how you do, because that helps all of us. And I think in addition, it says in the sutra that wherever the sutra is read, the land becomes sacred too. So if you're sitting in your home or you're sitting in Jamun village to be, which is the plum village, hopefully in India, we shall read the sutra so that we make these lands holy. And in that, there's lots of mentions of the Ganga and the number of grains of sand in the Ganga. So all of us in India feel very familiar, knowing exactly what that means. And when we walk on the beach of the Ganga or into the Ganga. But I want to ask Sister Henium a question as a start, if you don't mind, if you're waiting for some others. And that was, you've been writing this book on Zen and the art of saving the planet, if I've got the right title. And I know that we've often talked about this sutra being one of the first treatises on deep ecology and how relevant it is today. And I just thought you may want to touch on that aspect of this sutra also, considering what the title of your collaborative book is.
Thank you, Shantum. Yes, we so the last year, a number of us have been editing a book of Thai's teachings, and the Diamond Sutra is at the forefront of that. And I've also contributed a commentary. So I'm swimming in the world of the Diamond Sutra every day at the moment. That will feature in that book, and so it will be out this autumn in October in the UK and the US. So hopefully deliveries to India must be possible, or we can see with Shantum how to make sure it's easily available in India. And for Thai, the Diamond Sutra is the sort of the ultimate insight with which we need to equip ourselves to address the climate crisis. And he sometimes called it the oldest text on deep ecology in the world. And so what I find wonderful about it is it's not just the no self teachings that we hear about also with there's many other contemplations that can help us touch no self. But this one, we go through the door of no self to also go beyond ideas of humans, ideas of living beings rather than inanimate beings, and then even ideas of lifespans. And so it is a prism, if you like, through which we can transform our way of seeing things. And that can give rise then to the right kind of action that will help at the right kind of levels, both in our individual lives and in our actions, and as societies trying to address the climate crisis. And I think one thing for me that I find especially powerful in it is not only does it address human flaws of wrong thinking that have led to the wrong action, which means we're now in the situation we are, with too much CO2 and too much degradation of the planet. So it addresses the human problem. But what it also opens up or emphasizes, I think, is how we can have a really sacred dimension, the importance of a spiritual practice. And so when Thai teaches this sutra, he really explains, and I guess it's especially on this third point about when we have this real tendency, and especially in the West, to distinguish between inert matter and living matter. And from that root discrimination, so much harm is done. And so not only do we kind of not do the harm, but actually as a spiritual practitioner, or even Thay is inspiring us to become someone who has an active spiritual practice in our daily life. When we eat, when we take a shower, when we go for a walk, our spiritual energy is something that we can plug into, something we can nourish, something that we can cultivate to then support us, then to take more radical action to help the planet. And then that spiritual energy that we have built up then becomes a great source of strength. It becomes a resource that can then give us the energy we need as individuals and as a society to make the really radical changes we will need to do, definitely in my lifetime. But we need to have the stamina. And I think in the realm of sort of change makers and activists, burnout is a real issue. And the kind of connections to the natural world that these teachings point to allow us to avoid burnout, to really sustain ourselves, get the nourishment we need from nature, and handle ourselves with care and respect and compassion, just as we would like to handle the earth with care, respect, and compassion. So these teachings become a wonderful prism in this book to support those who would like to save the planet, or as we say at one point in the book, the planet cannot, of course, be saved once and for all, because also the planet is not a separate self-entity that has a lifespan. So it gets very, very interesting when you go into it. But it's like, who can we be today? How can we respond? And how can we use these teachings to give us the insights and the energy we need to take action? So yeah, the oldest text on deep ecology that is very, very powerful today. And I still feel it is unmatched in its kind of contribution. And Shantan will remember that when we were in Nalanda and we saw Professor Amartya Sen, the wonderful scholar, he is also a big fan of this sutra, and we had a great dialogue with him about a lot of these texts that really spread through the world on the different trade routes, and this one on both the northern Silk Route and the southern ocean Silk Route. Our ancestors 1,500, 2,000 years ago, cherished this wisdom, and I think it has a lot to offer us today. Yeah, thank you, Shantan.
Thank you, Sister Henium. And I forgot to say, Sister Henium actually means true dedication, which is on her name there. And the Buddha, when he was asked about the sutra, said, yes, 500 years from now, people would be still getting benefit from it. Of course, this is now 2,000, 2,500 years, and we are still getting benefit. And I think what you're saying is really that it's not just the individual consciousness, but it's the collective consciousness which needs to shift. And in that collective, Gaia herself, or Earth, our Mother Earth, but also I liked your analogy or your talk with the printer, because the printer needs to wake up too. And it did wake up once or twice when you just talked to her or him. So I think there's a hope in this collective shift that we can make, with not even discriminating between animate and inanimate. There are a few questions. So I'm going to ask, which I can't see on YouTube. If anybody has a question on YouTube, I don't know if Shalini or Manish is asking that, or there's something on the chat. Manish or Shalini, or who's looking after the YouTube question? Is there a question on that?
Yeah, there's a question on chat. I'll read it out.
Okay, that's Manish who's asking the question. So Sahinian, that's for you. Somebody else is asking, yeah.
What goes into making a positive thought so very powerful?
Should I invite a bell?
I'm happy to respond.
Okay.
What goes into making a positive thought so very powerful?
Yeah.
Well, one interesting thing is I am not sure that positive thoughts are more, less, or the same as powerful as negative thoughts. This is a very interesting point. I'm not sure that a positive thought is powerful in that the fruits can be infinite. The fruits can be infinite. And I would say that we consume our thoughts. And we'll just spend a moment on this, because Shantam also mentioned it at the beginning of our session. And I think it's really, really important to realize that we're made up of what we're consuming. And in our tradition, we speak about nutriment. And in particular, there's a teaching on the 4 nutriments. And it's really, really important to be able to understand how we have come to be, how our days are as they are, how our habits are as they are. It's all about what we're consuming. And one of those 4 elements is what's called consciousness. So on the one hand, it's the collective atmosphere. So the collective thoughts. So right now we have a lot of collective negative thinking on the planet and in society. And we also consume our own thinking. So it's as though there's a sort of feedback loop in our mind. This is the rumination, like a ruminant, like a cow or a sheep or other animals that chew hard, and we will be chewing on our thoughts, our own thoughts that we are allowing to be there. And they are a kind of fuel coming in to our consciousness. And that's why it's really important to be able to pay attention to what is the thinking. Sometimes it's verbalized self-talk. Sometimes it's more like feelings. It may not be associated with words, but it's thoughts, but without words. And we use our energy of mindfulness to know and to recognize our state of mind. And as soon as mindfulness intervenes, we start to have some options. And then we have various different practices, the practice of appropriate attention, where we then choose to move our attention to have different kinds of thoughts, the practice of gladdening our mind, like kind of turning on the lights, switch, the practice of changing channel. So we have many different practices to then shift, using the energy of mindfulness to then shift how we're thinking. And how we're thinking is also affecting our body. And so I would say the power of a positive thought is that a positive thought has this absolute ripple effect. A positive thought can lead to a more relaxed state of mind, can lead to a more relaxed or positive and more open body. Because exactly this question of spirit and matter that we were talking about, like matter and spirit, substance. There's no distinction really between our mind and our body. Our mind is an embodied mind. So as soon as we have a positive thought, our body is experiencing that and is benefiting from it. And then where it becomes, obviously, with our practice, very powerful is that we can bring positive attention, and ultimately, a positive thought is a compassionate thought. It is a thought of understanding. We always say that compassion and understanding go together. That is compassion and understanding for our own body and mind, for our own feelings, for our own habits and states of mind, and for those we love. And just as the thought immediately is experienced by the body, our thoughts are what lie behind our speech habits. There are moments we just do not know where that word came from, or that phrase. We may have hurt someone and we just think, how did it come out? I don't know. It just came out. Well, it is the thinking that we had allowed ourselves to generate before that, leading up to that, maybe over quite some time, that then gave rise to that speech action in that moment. And that's why practicing awareness of our states of mind is so, so, so important. And when we speak about mental health, mental health is really where it all begins, because when we can see and take care of our consciousness, our speech will be affected, our body will be affected, and our daily actions will be affected. So I don't know if the question was really what it said or whether there was an underlying thing also about the positive power of, prayer, goodwill, and good wishing. And that is also something to be explored. And perhaps in our lifetime, there will be a lot more research about the impact of those things. But certainly for myself, deeper contemplation is something that I do, and it's something that nourishes me and informs my actions. But I don't have a power of thought-omometer or some kind of a data set I can give you about the power of it. Each of us, we have our own experience. Yeah, but thank you for this question.
There is a question on YouTube. How to handle pain and insecurity.
Could you repeat it one more time?
The question is how to handle pain and insecurity.
So question, how to handle pain and insecurity. I think this question may come up when we can't bear a painful feeling or a pain in our body, or we can't bear the insecurity. So part of the answer is in the question, which is that where we can help address this is how we are meeting the way we are meeting that painful feeling or that insecurity. So it's the sort of the doubling up around it, the folding over it, or the resisting around it. Now, if it is physical pain, I hope most of you who are watching this have some kind of physical practice, whether it's simply breathing in meditation from time to time, however often you can do it, breathing while walking and taking mindful steps while walking, or even a regular practice of deep relaxation, which for me, I have found one of the most powerful Dharma doors for my own healing and transformation. So these are not Band-Aids, simple sticking plasters. These are very deep practices that through our awareness of the experience of breathing, the way we breathe, the way we allow ourselves to breathe, is our way of being with physical pain. For example, we can breathe with the part of our body that is more well, or using our awareness and presence with our body, we can soften the areas of tension and create ease and a loosening around them. And because of the interbeing of body and mind, there's a pain that comes from feelings. We have the two at the same time, pain in the body and pain in the feeling, pain in the mind. When something hurts, it's also important to allow it to hurt. And this may sound counterintuitive, but some of our problem is when something feels painful or is difficult to accept. So it's the resistance that is creating the obstacle here. And my own experience has been to use my practice of breathing and sitting, sometimes in the sitting position, sometimes lying down with my knees up and my hands on my belly, so I can really practice deep breathing, to allow myself to be in a moment where there is an acutely painful emotion or an acutely painful kind of state of mind, like regret. Sometimes for me, regret is more in the mind than in the body. And to allow it to be there. And in many contemplative traditions, many meditative traditions, this is really part of the practice, which is accompanying our pain and not letting it be alone. So bringing our attention to be with it. And this is why our breath, mindfulness of breathing, training in our mindfulness of breathing is so important, because the breathing, it's not that you have the pain here and the breathing here and there's two separate things happening at the same time. My experience of my awareness of breathing is I become aware of everything about my breathing. You know, is it long or short? Is it smooth or jagged? You know, sometimes our breath gets caught in our chest. Is it regular and smooth, or is my breath actually really quite irregular? So there's many qualities to our breath when we're aware of being in the body. So awareness of the breath and the body from within the body. And I sometimes have the image that it's like a seismograph, you know, for earthquakes. They have those very, very sophisticated needles that give you the data of how much vibration there is. Our breath has that much data. It can tell you everything, and it contains the imprint in it of our feelings and of our pain. So my experience has been that when I'm taking care of and being with my breathing is a way for me to be with the pain that is expressed through the quality of the breathing and how the breathing is affected by that painful thing. And for insecurity is essentially what we would call the mental formation of fear. It is a concern, what's going to happen? You know, I feel so at risk, I feel so vulnerable. What might happen? What can happen? And Tai always said to us that the best way to take care of the future or what might happen is by taking care of this moment. If you can breathe in this moment, you can breathe in that moment. You can breathe this evening, you can breathe tomorrow morning, you can breathe when something difficult happens. So breathing is really a training that allows us to feel more secure. Sometimes we use the phrase our Dharma body. It's a kind of quality of strength, like kind of armor that we carry around with ourselves. Capacity to breathe before we react. Our capacity to breathe when things seem to fall apart. That is our Dharma body in action. And this is why I am a big fan of a regular daily practice of meditation or walking or relaxation, whether it's 15 minutes in your day or 20 minutes or 5 minutes of each. It's so important. It's like a kind of muscle. It's a kind of fitness. And that is where our security lies. We know we have built up our Dharma body with our regular practice of mindfulness and applying our mindfulness while we're washing the dishes, while we're taking a shower, while we're eating our food. And we're building up this resource. And that is what can give us security and non-fear. We will be the best of ourselves, will be present, of clear mind, to confront whatever difficult situations may happen. We can't say that the difficult situations won't happen, but the question is, how are we gonna meet them, and how can we have the strength and the resilience to be able to meet them well? Thank you for the question.
So thank you, Sister Henium. We've overshot our allotted time by at least 15 minutes now. So I know there are more questions, but we just took some generic questions, and I know we've extended time. So let's let it be for this time. Thank you so much for being with us. And, I know we talked about an hour, and then we extended to an hour and 15 minutes. Now we've gone beyond. So I don't want to take more, indulge ourselves even more. But I really feel we've benefited a lot. I'm so grateful that you could create this space while you're at your parental home. And I know when you'll be back in Plum Village, you'll be even busy but please join us anytime. We were very fortunate to have Sister Chang Kong before you, and now and you can see the different generations of nuns in our community. And I hope one day we will have nuns from India. That is very much my hope, that we can reinvigorate that order of nuns in India to bring the Dhamma back to where the nuns first got ordained by the Buddha himself. So I think it's a wonderful community that Sister Chang Kong and Sister Henium come from. And we feel very blessed to be part of the extended community. And as Thai often says, Plum Village is not a physical place in France or in England in this case, but everywhere. It's a state of mind. And I think we are very blessed in India that we have Plum Village here for this evening and today. And I'm also grateful to Sister Henium for doing some deep relaxations on the Plum Village app, which is wonderful. So if you ever want to visit and hear her, go to the Plum Village app, and you can always hear Sister Henium's voice. The accent is excellent, as you know, and also the recommendation that we should practice every day. And as Ahimsa Trust, we've been offering this every morning from 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. To anybody who wants to come. And we've done now 30 days of the 60 days. So from tomorrow, from Monday, we start on feelings. But please do join us. I think it's just actually a good muscle, as she calls it, to develop. A muscle of our mind and practice. So you're always welcome. And I will invite 3 sounds of the bell before we close, but I will give Sister Henium anything else, a last. Oh, I should also add one other thing, sorry. The friends who are from the Dehradun Sangha and the Bargad Jamun Sangha who are on Zoom, and the core community, whoever's on Zoom, if you'd like to stay on for another half an hour, we will have a sharing like we do after these monthly gatherings. So please do stay on if you have the time and you'd like to, the friends who are on Zoom. And the friends who are on YouTube, practice, practice, and practice. Sister Henium, do you want to end with anything before I invite the bell? Is that?
I just would like to say thank you, dear Shantam. Thank you to everyone who I can see here on Zoom. Thank you to anyone watching on YouTube. It's a pleasure for me to share my Dharma joy and a pleasure to be connected to India. India is very dear to my heart. The last time I had a chance to be there was in 2014, and it was we can leave India, but India never leaves us, I think is how we say it. So it's an honor and a joy for me, and I hope to be back before too long. And I agree with Shantam's dream that the Buddha's homeland can benefit greatly from this wisdom being rejuvenated in the 21st century for the next generations, and it will give us the strength we need to meet the challenges that we have ahead. So thank you, dear Shantam. Thank you, everybody, and good luck with your practice. Enjoy the practice of mindfulness. Do not make yourself into a battlefield. Have determination, have the discipline. Don't be hard on yourself. If you're hard on yourself, stop. Practice smiling instead. Something very simple. So enjoy it. And of course, enjoy the app if you can. It's a real support. It's a real support. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Shantam. Thank you, Gitu. Thank you, dear Sangha.